Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was just going to say to the Honourable Lady I would love to be outside looking at the cherry blossom, as I'm sure we all would. And maybe indeed that's what some colleagues were doing before they wandered into the chamber. Anyway, the Honourable Lady asks for the key legislation, and she specifically mentions the Brexit bills, and in particular the Financial Services Bill. As she will know, we do want to look very carefully at the amendments that were brought back. The Financial Services Bill was actually a relatively straightforward bill that was seeking to deal with some in-flight files during the period of transition for Brexit. And, of course, an amendment added to it goes into a much more significant amendment that impacts on the rights of the Crown dependencies. So it's right that the government takes a bit of time to look at that and consider it properly, but of course we will bring that back in due course. She asks about the Brexit primary legislation, and she'll be aware that in addition to the EU Withdrawal Act, there were 9 exit-related bills that are either in Parliament or have already received royal assent. We've had the nuclear safeguards, the sanctions and anti-money laundering, the Haulage Permits and Trailer Registration Act and the Taxation Cross-Border Trade Act, and now the Healthcare, European Economic Area and Switzerland Arrangements Act, which are all now law. The ones that are now still in the Commons or the Lords are the Immigration Bill, the Agriculture Bill, the Fisheries Bill and, of course, the Financial Services Bill, as she's mentioned, and the Trade Bill is progressing through also. So that there is progress on these. They are all scheduled for when they need to receive royal assent. She asked for an update on secondary legislation, and I can say to her that almost all of the Brexit SIs that are needed for exit day have been laid, around 515 of about 550, and so those all of the programme for secondary legislation is in hand, and it is almost completed, and the rest is all planned for completion as it needs to be. The Honourable Lady asks about schools, and I'm sure she'll want to celebrate, as I do, that there are now 1.9 million more children being taught in good and outstanding schools, and that we've created 920,000 more school places between 2010 and 2018. And very importantly, the gap between disadvantaged pupils and others has narrowed. All very important results for giving young people a good start in life. She asks for a statement on the Knife Crime Summit. I will certainly take away that request, and I'm sure my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, will want to update the House. She talked about the national living wage, and again I'm sure she'll want to be sharing in the delight that the national living wage went up on Monday by the highest rate since it was first introduced in 2015, increasing by almost 5% to £8.21 per hour. The honourable gentleman shouts from a sedentary position. It was actually a Conservative government. In fact, it was the George Osborne, who was Chancellor at the time, who introduced the national living wage. This year, full-time... No, I'm talking about the national living wage. Full-time workers receiving the national living wage will be more than £2,750 better off a year compared to 2015. And then finally, the Honourable Lady raised the very serious issue of a photograph of the Leader of the Opposition being used as target practice. That is utterly unacceptable. I condemn it, as I'm sure do all honourable and right honourable members, in the strongest terms. And I would add that it's vital that anybody who leads any kind of role in public life is extremely careful about the sort of images and portrayals that they put forward. And I understand that my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, has written to the Shadow Secretary of State to respond to the point she's raised to him.
Brevity Tsar himself.